Hi everybody, I want to welcome you all to our Lunch and Learn today titled Healthy Habits for the Grilling Season. My name is Joshua and I'm one of the program managers for Buckeye Wellness out of the Office of the Chief Wellness Officer here at The Ohio State University. Today we are joined by our colleagues from the Ohio State University Wexner Medical Center's Nutrition Services Program with Chef Jim Warner and Chef Katie McCurdy, who will be providing us tips and tricks for making our backyard dining healthier this summer. The recipe that we'll be going through today will be provided in the description below. And if you have any questions, please email us at buckeyewellness@osu.edu. Without further ado, please help me welcome Chef Jim and Chef Katie.
Hi Josh, thanks for having us today. I'm Jim Warner, Program Director for Culinary Outreach.
And I'm Katie McCurdy. I'm a culinary educator with Nutrition Services. I work with Jim. And today we're going to be making some rainbow vegetable skewers on the grill. So I'll go ahead and hop right into, we're going to make the marinade for this. But first things first, we're going to want to talk about preparation. So if you have skewers, I just picked these up at the grocery store. They're like reusable skewers. They're thicker. You just need to marinate them for about 30 minutes in some water. And then that way they won't burn up on your grill because obviously we're putting it on a very high heat. So moving into our marinade, we just need a mixing bowl and a whisk. We're gonna start with just like a typical vinaigrette base. All right, so to start your vinaigrette base, you're gonna need 1 part vinegar and then 2 parts oil. So here we have an olive oil. We also need what are called emulsifiers. So they're things that help make this dressing stick together so it doesn't break. So we've got 2 tablespoons of honey, and that's gonna help sweeten this up a bit. And then we also have mustard. Both of these act as emulsifiers and will make this stick together really, really well. And then we'll marinate our protein in that. To this, we're gonna go ahead and add some grated ginger. So you can use fresh or you can buy pasted ginger at the store. It's really up to you. But I like fresh ginger. I think it adds a bit more of a fresh kick. And then you just go ahead and grate it over the back of your microplane. And a microplane grater just breaks down or grates everything into very, very fine shreds. And so we're looking for like, maybe like a teaspoon. You can also just chop it if you don't have a microplane. It's not a big deal. All right. Go ahead and got that out of there. And then we also are gonna have some ginger, or not ginger, we just did ginger. We're gonna do some garlic. Wanting this thing to open up a bit, but there we go. And then we can go ahead and just chop our garlic up. I'm going to smash it with the edge of our knife real quick and get those cloves out. And garlic actually has some properties that when allowed to sit after like smashed open, it releases those and allows, it's the allicin compound that allows your body to make that compound more bioavailable if it sits for a little while. So if you have time, do that and it'll be a little bit more nutrient. All right, we'll go ahead and pop that in there. And then to that, we're gonna go ahead and add our, we've got some pineapple coconut juice. The recipe calls for just pineapple juice, but I saw the blend and I thought, well, that's just gonna make it even more Hawaiian. So let's just do the coconut pineapple blend. And then we've got some low sodium tamari sauce, which is just a type of soy sauce that's gluten-free. So the main ingredient in most soy sauces are actually not soy. They end up being wheat. And so when you get the tamari, the first ingredient on that list is soy typically. And then I also like just a touch of sesame oil for nuttiness. And it just gives it a nice Asian flair. All right, so with our mix in here and our emulsifiers, we're gonna stream in a little bit of oil. And this should all bind together. If it breaks, it's really not a big deal. Your protein is still going to absorb all that flavor on there, and it's going to be delicious. All right, if you'd like a kick, you can add some sriracha. I'm going to add just a little bit of red pepper flakes to ours. But if you are not one that likes a little spice, then just leave it alone. All right, this looks great. So we're gonna go ahead and chop our tofu now. This is an organic, super firm tofu. Extra firm will do just fine, but super firm, they've already pressed off a lot of the water content, so your chances of this breaking on the grill or any of that sort of problems like you typically have with tofu will be a lot less. Go ahead and shove that off to the side. We're gonna just press out any excess water that we have. And then this is a good time to kind of think about the size of the veggies or the proteins that you're gonna wanna put on the skewer. You want it to be large enough that it's gonna be a comfortable bite. You don't wanna make them huge. That's gonna take a while for you to be able to even cook them through. But you also want them to be able to be large enough that they'll stay on and not break apart. So we'll go ahead with these guys and maybe do them like this size. Maybe a little smaller. And then you can kind of play around with it too. It takes a little while before you're fully comfortable with it. And then I'm going to take this in a small bowl and add about half of our dressing or our marinade. And then we're just going to let that soak for about maybe 10-20 minutes, really however long you have. Get the grill warming up. It'll be delicious. You can also sub other proteins if you like chicken. You can do chicken, you can do some shrimp. I'm gonna let Jim do the rest of the veggie prep, and then we'll build the skewers, and he can talk to you maybe about what he would do.
Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and start with our veggies. And as Katie said earlier, if you want to use chicken or beef or any kind of animal protein, you really have to watch out, because one of the things that you don't want to do is you don't want to get your meat charred. If it's charred and it's really black, it produces what they call heterocyclic amines, and they tend to be cancer causing, because you've really changed the structure of the meat to the point where it's charred and it's not good for your body. So at all costs, I would not char your meat. Even though a lot of people like it that way, it's not good for you. We're going to go ahead and take our peppers and slice these into sizes that are equal to, or if not, maybe a little bit smaller than our tofu pieces. And one thing that I found that's really easy to cut the peppers is you want to take off the top, then take your knife, and I'm using a serrated knife, which is really easy to kind of saw around this, is just bring this around, and then we have all of our seeds inside the pepper. And this is the one thing that no matter what I do, this is the one thing that impresses most of the people that we see in our audience, which kind of makes me crazy, but that's the way it is. We're going to go ahead and take our peppers, and you see when we did it that way, we got rid of all this white pithy part here, because this really has no flavor at all, and it tends to absorb some of the marinade. So I'm just going to cut these in pieces that are roughly the same size as the tofu. And we're using the orange peppers, which actually are my favorite because they tend to taste a lot sweeter than the green peppers or any other kind of peppers that we have, especially green. We've got our yellow pepper next, so we're going to go ahead and do the same thing. And if you see, I'm taking the serrated edge knife and I'm kind of working it around the seed pod there in the center. So then all we have to do is just throw this away, and a lot of people will cut their pepper directly in half, and then you have all these seeds all over your workstation, which is not cool. So we've got our peppers here ready to go. We have a couple more ingredients outside of the peppers. We've got our red pepper here. Same thing, you're going to want to start with the stem, take it off, and then work your way around the outside of the pepper. I'm just going to go ahead and cut these into quarters.
And the recipe is really a guideline, so if you have another veggie at your house that you would like to use, feel free to use it. For example, the recipe calls for red onion, mostly just to add more color and vibrancy, and it goes a little bit better, I think, with this flavor profile. But we had a white onion around, and I wasn't going to go shop for a specific type of onion when I have one. So just use what you have. Kind of use your imagination. It can be a lot of fun.
Okay, the next thing we have, this is not a cucumber. You do not grill cucumbers, they will taste terrible. This is a zucchini, okay? So we're going to take our zucchini, we're going to cut the ends off, and we're going to go ahead and slice this in half lengthwise. And if you look at the way my hands are, I've got like a little tunnel between my thumb and forefinger. So we're going to bring this through here, and then just drag the knife through the pepper. I'm sorry, through the zucchini. And we're just going to cut these into small pieces. And you don't want these too large for a couple of different reasons. Number one, if they are too large, they'll take too long to cook. And number two, if you have to leave them on and cook these, what's going to happen is you're going to overcook everything else at the cost of trying to cook the zucchini. A white onion. And to do the white onions, what I like to do is cut the bottom part off, which is the root section. Then we have our stem section here. Then we're going to cut the onion in half. Then we're going to take off one of the first one or two layers of the onion, whichever works best for you. Okay, so we're going to get rid of this. Then put this in our compost pile. And with the onions, we're just going to go ahead and we're going to cut these into quarters. And you want to keep these kind of a little bit smaller as well, because these tend to take a while to cook because they're stuck in between the vegetables and the tofu or whatever meat that you might select. So you want to make sure that these are really thin so they cook around the same time as all of the other vegetables, because it's all about timing with something like this. So we have all of these pieces here. You don't want to use a big chunk like that because that'll never cook on your skewer, and nothing's worse than having all these other cooked vegetables and then you have raw onions on your skewer. That's not going to work really, really well. If you have other vegetables that you like to see on here, mushrooms is one that a lot of people like to see. I like to use mushrooms, but when you're using raw mushrooms for your skewers, one problem that you'll have is when you try to put the mushroom through the skewer, the mushrooms are really tight and the mushrooms are really full of water. So when you put them on the skewers, mushrooms tend to crack or break and then they fall off the skewer. The best way to do mushrooms is you want to take them, blanch them, or you want to saute them in a little bit of olive oil, a little bit of garlic, let them cool, and then you can put them on your skewer and they won't break because they're already cooked. And when they get on the grill, they'll brown up really, really nicely for you, especially in the marinade that we have prepared for you today. So we're going to go ahead and start with the last vegetable that we have here. I'm sorry, the last piece of fruit is we have a pineapple here. And the one thing I like to do with pineapples is, number one, you want to wash these really, really well. Then you can take the top and take this off, and you can use this as a garnish. And this is something that you really, if you can use this, that's great. You'll want to grab this, and you're going to cut this directly in half.
Yeah, that'd be really cool for like a dinner party if you're making like a platter of skewers, to have that out on there, just kind of like a really pretty, like you said, a garnish that kind of just really can make your plate.
Yeah, so you've got these really nice garnish pieces here that you could use and put these on your platter with the skewers, and it's a real cheap garnish and you're not wasting anything. We have our pineapple, and you want to look for a pineapple that's got a little bit of give to it when you squeeze it, okay? Otherwise it's going to be a little bit underripe, but what works well in this grilling process, there's enough sugar in the pineapple that it's going to caramelize for you. So we're going to go ahead and take the top off. We're going to cut the bottom.
Yeah, I was always taught when you pick up the pineapple, if you smell like the base of it, it'll smell really fragrant if it's ready to go.
That doesn't mean you should go around at the grocery store and smell
smell
all the
all of them.
vegetables
Yes,
because
not all of them.
you'll get kicked out, okay? Quickly, okay? So we're going to take our pineapple and we're going to just go ahead and take our serrated knife again and just run this down the side of the pineapple, and you want to remove as many of these eyes here that you possibly can because those tend to be a little bit tough. And this shouldn't take you too long to do. And what's great is with this pineapple, if you see the other ingredients that we have in hand as a proportion, this is a larger proportion of what we might put on the skewer, so you can actually save the pineapple to eat later. It's a great snack, great with cottage cheese, or if you just want to eat it plain, it's great all by itself. So we're taking off the eyes here. I know that sounds horrid, but that's what they're called. So we're going to go ahead and get rid of all of our outside skin from the pineapple. So we have our pineapple here ready to go. I'm going to take this and I'm going to cut it right down the middle. I'm going to lay these flat, and the reason I'm laying these flat is for two reasons. Number one, I want to do this safely, and number two, I want to make sure that I get the right size of pineapple for the skewers. So we're going to take these, line these up, cut these in half, again lengthwise, and you can see how I have my hands. My fingers are never below the blade of my knife. And the reason for that is you know, I make a living using my hands, and if I cut them, I'm out of work, and that's not good. So after that, we're going to take the pineapple and we're going to turn it, and if you're right-handed, what you're going to do is you're going to hold this with your left hand, then you're going to cut out the core. And the core is really tough. It's really not good for anything except for compost. Doing that here. So the same thing on the other side here. And we're going to remove that center here. Okay. So what we'll do then is, again, we're going to take the knife and just cut these into sections. And if you notice, every time I line these up, I line up 2 to 3 pieces that I can cut with only one knife stroke. This saves time, and it gives you the consistency and the look that you want. I think we have enough pineapple here with what we have there in stock, but I'm going to go ahead and cut these down as well. Put these ready for the deer, and we're going to save this one for later. So we're going to go ahead and get rid of all the scrap here. And then we're going to put the pineapple chunks back into the container. And the one thing that you'll find out with pineapple is it is rather kind of, say, juicy or spicy, but if you have any little cuts on your fingers, you'll find them really quickly with the pineapple juice, so you'll know.
It's like scrubbing your hands with a lid.
Yes, it really is. So if you want to wear gloves when you're doing these, you're more than welcome to do so. So right now we have all of our ingredients here. We have our pineapple, hopefully you can see. We're going to put some dressing.
Just lightly over our veggies. We're not looking for anything too crazy coating. We'll leave the rest off to the side to finish with, but we'll go ahead and just give this a little toss.
And when you're building these, you want to look for color and you want to look for flavor on these as well. The one thing that I found that really works best is you're going to want to put a pepper or something that's a little harder at the end, because the peppers tend to stay in place the whole time. And with these skewers that they have, the skewers actually have a little end piece here, so you don't go the whole way down the skewer. If you can see this little piece here, that stops where the vegetables should go. So we're going to put a yellow onion after the orange. We're going to put a piece of zucchini in here next. We're going to add a chunk of tofu. And I'm going to do this tofu lengthwise so it doesn't fall off the skewer. We're going to add some pineapple here. Then we've got a Ritz piece. And then there's the first batch. So you've got yellow, white, green, white, and this is going to caramelize a little bit on the grill. Then we have yellow, and then we have red. So all we're going to do in order to make this a whole skewer is we're going to repeat just what we did, and this might be enough just for one portion here. So we've got the pineapple, we've got the red pepper, we've got the yellow pepper. If you can see what we've got here. And then we're going to go ahead and put another piece of tofu on here. And with the tofu, we're going to end this with the pepper because the pepper is going to lock it in place. So there, right now you have probably 5 to 6 ounces of vegetables and tofu, which we're going to grill, and we're going to let Katie make her custom-made skewer as well.
All right. Just like Jim said, we'll go ahead and we'll start with our pepper. We'll get that on there. I'll put some tofu on as well. Skewers are really delicious, and they can be really fun for kids too, because they can kind of make their own custom sort of dinner. You can make them in a ton of different ways. We'll go ahead and add our pineapple and our zucchini. And I mean, if you are not someone who cares a lot about something being exact, then you don't have to go in any exact order. Just add on what sounds good to you. I'm just kind of throwing them on there.
And one of the reasons I think Katie had mentioned this is you really always want to soak your skewers so they don't burn up. If you get the really thin skewers, those tend to burn at the ends almost immediately. So you don't want to get too crazy with those. Katie's going to make one more of these, and then we're going to head over to the grill. And we have the grill set at about, right now it's on high heat. I'm going to move this down to about a medium high heat. We don't want it super high because what's going to happen is the vegetables and the tofu will burn before they actually cook. One thing that you may want to do is if you have some kind of a lid that you could put on top of these once you're grilling those, you could use the lid to kind of keep the heat in place. And if you don't have a lid, you can use the tray that we're using here, right here, to take the skewers over to the grill.
And then another thing you're going to want to do before you put these on here, I did not season the marinade that we put it in because we're going to salt and pepper these individually before we put them on the grill so that we can control the amount of salt that goes on there. Just don't want this to turn into a sodium bomb, if you will, because there tends to be a decent amount of sodium in more of the soy sauces and flavors.
Right now, if you look here in the camera, we have 4 beautiful skewers that are on here. They really didn't take that much time to put these together, but again, we have the proper skewers that have been soaked. So we're going to go ahead and in a second move over to the grill. So we're back here at the grill, and we're going to take a little bit of vegetable oil spray, and don't do this at home, okay? What you want to do is if you want to oil these up a little bit, take a cloth and then just spray or put a little bit of oil on there and rub it on your grill. And you're doing that is so you don't have the vegetables stuck on here. So I'm going to put these on here perpendicular to the actual grates. And right now you can already see these starting to burn or cook a little bit. And you can tell here that we're starting to get some, a little bit of heat, we're starting to get some color. And what's going to happen with your vegetables is you're going to caramelize the vegetables a little bit, which means you're actually changing the sugar structure that's in the peppers and in the vegetables. And it's going to taste sweeter without actually adding any more sugar to this. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to season these with some kosher salt And when I do that, I'm going to raise this about 15 inches above, so I get a really nice even distribution of salt on here. I see a lot of people that will take the salt and they'll do one of these things like this. That's really not good because you tend to put too much salt in one location, and sodium is something that we need in our diet, but we don't need too much because if you have any heart conditions.
Yeah, and Jim, why do you prefer kosher salt?
A couple of reasons. Number one, I like kosher salt because number one, you can kind of feel in your fingers how much you have.
Yeah.
Number two, it's very tactile, and oftentimes I'll mix 2 parts of kosher salt to 1 part of black pepper, and that the black pepper is kind of a marker for me. And when I do the black pepper, that tells me exactly how much I have because I see it on the skewers.
Yeah.
So we're going to take the black pepper, and again we're going to kind of do a little airborne drop on here. And if you can see that on the camera, we have a nice even distribution on here. So we've got these 2 ready to go. I've got a skewer, and the one I'm going to go back to first is I'm going to take the skewer that I placed first. I'm going to flip that one first.
Yeah, these are going to take about 3 to 4 minutes each side, possibly 5, especially if you're using an animal protein. You're going to want to make sure that you use a thermometer or that you check one of those pieces of proteins to make sure that they are cooked all the way through the middle. And that's going to be kind of the difficult part about when you marry this many vegetables together with the animal proteins like chicken or shrimp.
And you can see here on the skewer, we're starting to get a little bit of caramelization here on the peppers, on the zucchini. We're starting to get some caramelization from the marinade on the tofu. That's what you want, and that's going to add some added flavor that you really didn't consider when you were grilling these, or starting to think about grilling these, how much sweeter they're going to be and how much more flavor it's going to add.
Yeah, and what Jim was talking about earlier with the caramelization on the proteins when you're grilling it, it's not the same for vegetables. So you don't get the same chemical compound and breakdown that ends up being carcinogenic with like tofu or veggies. And then also, one way that you can help reduce that risk of the caramelization and that carcinogen is to marinate your protein ahead of time so that it kind of creates a little bit of a barrier.
Yeah, and what happens with your marination process, usually the marinades contain some sort of acid in there, and what the marination process does is that tends to start to break down your meat, or starts to tend to break down your vegetables if you let these marinate for any amount of time. What it does is it changes the protein structure in that product, and it starts to break it down. So even though it's not cooked, it kind of changes the protein structure, so it's a little bit softer, so it tastes like it's cooked. But the main thing is we want to heat this up to at least 165, especially if you're using chicken or beef or pork or shrimp, whatever other kind of animal-based protein that you might want. Okay, so we've got our skewers, and as you can tell here, this one is really well done. We have the nice caramelization of the tofu, the nice caramelization on the vegetables. So we're going to start moving these over, and we're going to go ahead and serve these on our rice. And if you have any pieces that fall off, you can certainly use those. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to walk this over to our cutting table, and we're going to serve 2 skewers on this mixture of rice and quinoa. And these are a little bit hot, but I'm going to go ahead and lay this right down here. And I'm going to take my fingers, and don't try this at home unless you might have a towel. I can do this because after all these years of being a chef, I have very little feeling on my fingers. So we've got 1 skewer laying there. We're going to go ahead and we're going to take the second one, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to pull this. So we're going to go ahead and remember the free garnish that we have here? We're going to go ahead and start pulling out some of these pineapple leaves. And we're actually going to put 3 on here because most things in nature grow in odd numbers, so we just don't want to put 2 on here. So just to make this look a little more fun, we're just going to cut these down a little bit, cut the pineapple leaves on kind of an angle. And this might be kind of date me in terms of garnishes because this has been used for a long time. We're just going to put the pineapple leaves in here and just put those on your plate like you have a really nice garnish. And you want to make sure everything's centered on the plate. And there you have some really nice tofu, veggie, and fresh fruit skewers. Easy to make, highly nutritious, and everything you're eating here is plant-based, so it's all good. Hey.
Thank you guys for joining us, and if you enjoyed this recipe, feel free to look for us on our Nutrition Services website, and you'll find lots of fun recipes for you to enjoy.
Okay, thanks for having us today, and we'll see you soon. Thank you very much.
Bye, guys.
So long.